Hey, I'm ready.
Why don't we go and get started, Lisa?
Okay, well, I'm honored to get to participate in the digital version of DevDotNext. It's really exciting. And I changed my title a little. I had a whole team approach to testing in continuous delivery, but testing is not really the goal. Testing is something that we do, but quality is the goal. Good quality is the goal. So that's why I made that change. And this is a talk that's based on a lot of work I've done with a lot of other people, and just mostly in the testing space, as how we're integrating testing into continuous delivery and how we're trying to get the whole team engaged in quality. All right, and so just a little bit about me. I've been a hands-on tester on Agile teams for the past 20 years, mostly high-performing teams. So I've been really lucky to be on teams where we didn't start out that way, but where we really learned a lot along our journey. And I've tried to share the things we've learned in books and courses and so on that I've done with Janet Gregory. And I'm just about to start a new job as a quality owner at OutSystems, and I'm going to be helping to figure out how we can do a better job of observability, how we can learn more from production and be able to deal with things that happen that we didn't expect to happen. And I'm always happy to talk to everybody. I've got my email address there and my Twitter ID, so please reach out to me anytime. So, like I said, I've been lucky to be on. See, I have my displays wrong. I'm just going to swap them. Can y'all still see my screen?
We can see you in note mode, Lisa.
Oh no, that's not what I want. Okay, I kind of messed up. I should have put my notes on. I should have put my notes on the other screen so that I would be looking at you and not at the other screen. Do you mind if I stop sharing and redo it?
Please do, Lisa.
Sorry. Technical issues always get me. Uh, okay, wait, let me swap the screen first. All right. And now, are you seeing my slides?
We are.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Um, so, uh, oh gosh, I got way off though. Oh dear, dear. See, this is what happens. I get nervous and everything goes wrong. All right, so I've been lucky over the years to be on teams that succeeded with continuous delivery, and even before we even had the word continuous delivery, so this goes way back. And I think the reason that we were successful at it was that when we started out and things were kind of a mess, we made a commitment that we wanted to deliver the best possible quality that we could for our customers. So we wanted to write code we'd bring home and show our moms and put on our fridge. And we wanted an application that solved our customers' problems and made them happy. And also to make our business succeed, because our business model was based on everything being automated. And so we made that commitment to quality mean something, and it didn't happen overnight, but we worked together. We did all the different testing activities all the way around that continuous DevOps loop to make sure that we were building quality into our product. So I'm going to share some of my stories to illustrate how this whole team idea works. And if I say anything people don't understand, you have any clarifying questions, then please feel free to ask along the way. So in my experience, you learn more from failures than from success. It just kind of sticks better. And so I have experienced more than once the pain of being on a team that decides to move to continuous delivery, but we're not really ready. We don't have the foundation in place. So one of the teams I was on, I don't want to name names, we had awesome developers, really knew what they were doing. Really great team, great designers. Everybody on the team was awesome. We did pairing 100% of the time, test-driven development, automating tests at all levels. And that was going pretty well. And we decided to move our app to the cloud because that was the thing to do. And we got all our infrastructure in place. We had our pipelines, we had our blue-green deploy, and we thought we're ready. And so our director said, yeah, let's start deploying twice a week because small changes are less risky. And it's easy to revert if we screw up. And I agreed with that concept, but I just didn't have a good feeling about it because honestly, up to that point, we were supposed to be releasing every 2 weeks, and we were not all that great at doing that. Um, so that was a problem. Um, and part of our problem was we had a pretty complex single-page application, JavaScript, and there was a whole lot of logic built into the pages. There were potential for lots of people concurrently using the same things in the application at one time that need to be able to see each other's changes. So it was highly, highly complicated. And we had a team of 25 to 30 developers and 2 testers. Obviously, we testers couldn't test everything. And we kind of unfortunately got sucked into that sort of safety net role. So despite having thousands and thousands of automated tests, automated regression tests, we still had a list of things that we had to test manually. So it was our release regression checklist. Before we released, we were supposed to go through this manual checklist of all the things we couldn't automate for whatever reason. And when you start going through a list like that, you start noticing things that weren't even on your list, but it's like, oh, that looks odd. Now I got to go out and see if that problem's already in production. If it's not, then maybe we have a showstopper problem here. And so when we're trying to do twice weekly deploys and doing this release checklist at least twice a week, only it was really more than twice a week because, so we have a problem today, let's try to release tomorrow. We've got a new release candidate. Now we got to do the whole manual checklist again. We were spending all our time on that. So we had no time for more valuable testing like exploratory testing, security testing, accessibility testing, whatever it was. We didn't have time for that stuff anymore. And so we started to have a lot of regression failures in production, not only because our regression test coverage was not that great, which I'll get into that some more, but also just because it was such a complicated system, and if we changed something, we would have unexpected changes somewhere else. If we weren't doing the exploratory testing, we weren't finding those before release. So that was just not going well. Um, and honestly, we were not always even deploying once a week once we tried to do this. So it was kind of terrible. It was very stressful. So how did we turn that around? Well, one thing we were good at was looking at problems together, retrospecting on them. And we all agreed that the biggest problem was this lack of time for exploratory testing. And, we needed to be able to find the complex issues that could impact things unexpectedly. So the first thing that we did, nobody wanted to do the manual checklists. Those are just soul crushing. Nobody wants to do those. We just threw it. We just decided to say, we're not doing this anymore. If somebody else wants to do it, go ahead. But we testers are not doing that anymore. And here's a newsflash. We never encountered any regressions related to things that were on that checklist. So we were wasting time with that. And the development manager said, yeah, exploratory testing, this is a good thing. We all need to do it because 2 testers is not going to scale. And so everybody on the team really needs to learn some of these skills. And we want the developers to do exploratory testing at the story level. So before they say they're finished with a story, we want them to do some manual exploratory testing on it. And so, well, they needed to learn those skills. They made those skills part of the skills matrix that developers needed to kind of go up the career ladder. So that was added motivation for them to learn those skills. And so we testers were asked to do workshops and teach exploratory testing skills. And we also started pairing with the developers, something we had wanted to do for years. And we're told, oh, you'll slow our developers down, you testers, if you pair with us. So we started pairing with them, and as they're writing production code, and we give them suggestions, not only for the automated tests to specify, but also here's some things we could explore manually now that we think we're finished. So we started doing this, and very, very quickly, we started having fewer dramas in production, and we started being able to get to that twice weekly release cadence because we were not spending so much time trying to sort out production because we'd messed it up. So that worked out really well. One of the things I've learned over the years is that when you have a problem, it's really good to make it visible. Once you make it visible, you can have conversations about it and start thinking of experiments to improve on that problem. So Abby Bangser and I collaborated on a pipeline workshop at European Testing Conference 2 years ago, and I learned so much from her. At the same time, learning similar things, collaborating with Ashley Hunsberger. And the idea is spend some time visualizing your pipeline. What does it look like? And see where you can improve it. So it's a really great exercise that we do in our workshop, and teams can do this very easily, just in an hour even or less. Get some cards with all your pipeline steps on them, lay them out on a table, do sticky notes, put them on a wall. Or actually, you can't do that now. What am I thinking? Get on your virtual whiteboard and use your virtual sticky notes and figure out what your pipeline looks like. Do this together. And the first things that happen when you commit your changes are the really fast feedback things. So those are really great because we know right away if we cause any regression failures. If we have any problems, we'll get that fast feedback. And as we move along to the right of the pipeline, it's slower feedback. We're getting more confidence. The other thing that was kind of surprising to me when I started doing this with Abby is that, guess what? The manual things we do are also part of our pipeline. If you have no automation at all, you still have a pipeline. Your code still has to go through a path to get to production. And so calling out those manual steps makes you realize, oh, maybe we could automate these and speed things up. Or maybe they're not automatable and we need to think of ways that we can do those asynchronously using release feature toggles or dark launches or something so that we can hide features in production, go ahead and deploy them, and then not turn them on for everybody until we're confident about it. So visualizing this helps you see what is there any opportunity for more parallel things, more fanning out and back in? Are there any particular quality gates you want to put in, those kind of things? So each one of these stages provides some feedback, and we depend on that feedback to improve our quality. So obviously a big part of this is your automated regression tests, and we rely also things like automated performance tests. There are all kinds of automated tests that we rely on. So going back to my story, we had thousands of automated regression tests at all levels: unit level, API level, UI level, but we still had pretty serious regression failures in production, and way too often we couldn't trust our tests. So we had a lot of those, especially UI tests. We had a lot of those flaky tests that when they fail, nobody looks at it anymore because yeah, just run that test again, it'll pass. And often those were real bugs that just didn't happen every time. And because our single page app was so complicated and prone to issues with concurrency when multiple users were working in the same area, that caused a lot of flakiness to the test too. So what can you do about that? Again, here's a visual that can help you have a conversation. So this is Ashley Hunsberger's test suite canvas. And I know it's really small here, but you can download it from her GitHub site, and I will make these slides available. It's just a great way to guide conversations around each automated test suite in your pipeline, or maybe an automated test suite you don't have yet. So what is it that you want to learn from each test suite? What's the purpose? Who needs to know about the results of that test suite? What will they do with that information? What risks are we mitigating? And I think some of the most interesting questions here that I wouldn't have thought of necessarily without this visual aid is that things like constraints. And so a lot of teams have tried to automate tests in the past and and failed or had problems with it. And so it's almost an emotional constraint. They're afraid to try again because they really don't want to fail again. So there are a lot of things that can slow you down. Another area I think is really important to discuss is engagement and failure response. We should really, when we're designing a new automated test suite, we should start by saying, when these tests fail, who is going to take responsibility for investigating the failure and making sure that if there is something wrong, that we get it fixed. Um, Too often people get busy, teams get busy, they start not noticing failures, or if you have flaky tests that fail a lot, you start just blowing it off. And you need to be clear on who's going to handle those things. And again, picking on my same team, it was a great team. I'm sorry to tell bad stories about them, but we had our production deploy pipeline. We're going to run every Tuesday and Thursday and deploy to production. And we had a big monitor up on the wall to show the health of that build. And boy, when it failed, it would go all kinds of red. The problem was, and it also sent messages to Slack, but the problem was everyone on the team was pairing. They were all pair programming. They were all very focused on what they were doing. They did not look up and notice the monitor. They did not go and look in Slack and notice the notifications. And so I was like, this is definitely a problem, because if we didn't do anything about it, it's like our build was kind of slow. It took 45 minutes to run. And so if we had to start it over, what are the odds we're really going to be able to release today or deploy today? So we got just a subsection of the team, and it's a big team. So we got a cross-functional section of the team in a room, and we brainstormed for 30 minutes. How can we make sure that we notice the failures and somebody takes responsibility for them? And so there were all kinds of ideas. My idea was to have a machine that would dispense chocolate to the person who fixed the build, but that didn't win. The winning idea was a blue police light that was hooked up to the build, and when the build failed, the light went off. So that was a bit harder to ignore. That's not something you want to keep doing, but it's a good way to start building a new habit. So again, having the conversations with your team and thinking about what to do is really important. I think there's something else I was going to say on this slide. So I'm here telling you all about visualizing your pipeline and using the test suite canvas. And guess what? When I try to get my own teams to do this, they don't always want to do it. They don't always want to do what I suggest. Sometimes they do. And that's a drag. But I can still do it myself. So on this particular team, I decided to visualize the pipeline myself and analyze all of the test suites along the way. What were we learning from that test suite? What was the purpose? And also, what problems were we having with it? Were there flaky tests, or was there a lot of duplications? Like, we're running this suite of tests, it's a lot like this other suite of tests. Do we really need them all? And that helped me formulate questions to bring to the rest of the team. So unfortunately, the team didn't participate together to do that activity, but it still helped me think of good questions, and we still made improvements to our pipeline and to our automated test suites. So like I say, our team had all these automated tests, but they were not preventing all the regression failures. And so particularly the UI level tests, they just weren't very effective. When I took a look at them, they were pretty much just happy path. They didn't have a lot of assertions. And it just was because these tests were done by people who were not experienced with specifying automated regression tests. So we really wanted to make sure that the parts of our application that had to work were well covered by automated regression tests. So again, we got a cross-functional group subset of the team in a room: developers, designers, architects, testers, product owner, and a senior developer drew the front-end architecture on the whiteboard. And then we started talking about what were the risks in these different areas and writing those on the whiteboard too. And so this was a great way to prioritize what are the areas we want to make sure we have covered with automated regression tests. And we can start prioritizing them. And then as we made changes to the system, added new features or whatever, we could make sure that we had good test coverage. We could refactor the tests that we had to make them more effective, or write new tests as needed. We committed to trying some better practices. For example, for our UI level tests, we decided to start using the page object model and do better. Just people had been a bit lazy with their development practices. There was a lot of duplicated code. It was just kind of sloppy. And so we tightened those up. It's like, let's give this the same care we give our production code, because the tests are just as valuable, in my opinion. So we gradually improved our coverage of features. So all these things we did cut down problems in production. That gave us more time for feature work, which is cool. It gave us more time to refactor automated tests and make them even better. And so it really turned things around and really let us get into that twice a week continuous delivery cadence, which we hoped eventually to be, every day, or even go to continuous deployment where every commit could go straight out to production. So that was the goal. So I mentioned I'm really interested in observability, which is about asking the questions you didn't anticipate. So we've had monitoring for years. We have our dashboards and our great alerts and things that let us know when we have problems in production. But those are things we anticipated. So we instrumented our code and set up our alerts and formatted our logs to help us know when the potential expected things might happen. But what about the things we couldn't expect? So today, our systems are so complex and they fail in so many complex ways, we cannot possibly anticipate them all. But if we have the right information, we can respond to it quickly. So the idea behind observability, and I'm not an expert, I'm learning about it, but is let's instrument every event in our code. Let's log every event in our code and have a way that we can trace journeys through the code. So if a user has a problem, we can actually quickly identify what did that user do leading up to that problem. Quickly identify issues, quickly fix them. And even notice, even start just watching the data, watching the patterns. Maybe we'll notice a problem before the customers do. This is, again, where I think testers come in. We're really good at spotting unusual patterns. We're good at asking questions, and we're good at spotting risks. So this is why I think tester skills are really important for observability. And I think we all need to have good testing skills, no matter what our official discipline is on the team. So the team that I've been talking about, we got very interested in this, reading some of the early writing from Cindy Stradharan and Charity Majors, and my friend Abby Bangser also has been kind of a pioneer in this. So we were already using things like Mixpanel, Splunk, New Relic, and Datadog to get data. We didn't have, it was not quite to the point where we had observability tools specifically yet, but we started realizing how much we needed to really depend on production data. And even for things like deciding what new features to use or to create, we wanted to base our hypotheses about what would be valuable to our customers based on real data, how people were really using the system, and what effect we thought a new feature would have. So yeah, the whole team really does need to be conscious about quality. When we start talking about a new feature, the first question that I think we should ask is, how are we going to test this feature? And I find that leads to a better architecture, a better design, better code, because we're thinking about testing first. Testability is really important to make it easy to automate tests, to make it easy to do exploratory testing, things like that. And operability is really important. We need to instrument our code in good ways. We need to make sure that when the code's in production, it gives us the information that we want. So all these things have become more and more important, because we can test all we want, and we should keep testing all we want before we release to production or deploy to production. But our test environments are never going to look like production. They never have, and it's even harder these days to do that with all the distributed systems and microservices and everything, and all the external systems that our apps may depend on. And so we really need to master other forms of testing in production I didn't really get into. There's a lot of other potential things that we can do using release feature toggles to hide features from most users while we test them in production, or let a small subset of users use them and watch the logs and see if we get errors, see what happens. We need that. That's part of testing. We need it to build in quality, more quality into our application, into our product. And I think it's really important to focus on value to customer. What's valuable to the people using our software? What problems do they have that our product is solving for them? And as a tester, I have to resist the temptation. If somebody gives me something to test, I kind of like, I think this part of the code is going to be the most fragile. I bet I'll find some bugs there, because it's fun to find bugs, but it's more fun to prevent bugs, though, really. And what I really am trying to do is make sure, is this new piece of code delivering the value that it's intended to deliver, that the customer needs? So really focusing on what's the goal here. Rather, it's important to find the bugs and the edge cases and stuff like that, but it shouldn't be our priority. And we need to find out what is important to our customer, and that's what all these cool tools that we have these days to watch what customers are doing in production. That's really helping us on that side. So delivering value frequently at a sustainable pace, uh, that's Elizabeth Henderson's sort of definition of Agile. That's even more important if you want to succeed with continuous delivery. So I think it's really important to have diverse perspectives on our team. So we know diversity helps with innovation and things like that, but having, we need generalized specialists, but we also need some specialized skills, and we need to try to transfer those specialized skills. So we can have people who are AI experts, we can have people who are machine learning experts, data experts, operations experts, testing experts, business analysis experts, but then we all help each other get some basic knowledge of those things and some meta knowledge of those things. And so that helps everybody overcome, I think it helps us overcome our unconscious biases, because we're all noticing different things. We have different viewpoints. And we're kind of blurring the roles on the team. That's the idea behind DevOps, is we're gonna build a product and we're gonna take care of it in production. That's our product. It's our responsibility all along the way. And I think we need a good diversity in our team to succeed with that. As a tester, I really want to act more as a testing consultant or coach, just to help other people think about testing, learn to build it in, kind of just advocate a bit for quality, kind of advocate for the customer point of view, and also help with things like slicing our features down into small stories and then end-to-end thin slices, minimum viable product, if you will, or learning release, that we can put something in production without spending too much time on it, get some feedback to see if we want to continue building it. Those are all things I find that testers are good at helping with, because again, we're good question askers, we're good at helping business people articulate what it is they really want, and providing us concrete examples of how the system should behave, so we can turn those into executable tests that guide our development, and that we can also turn into automated regression tests. So there's just lots of parts of the puzzle that come together there. Another thing I did on the same team that I've been talking about is we experimented with having really small teams, kind of the base camp model. So 1 or 2 or 3 developer pairs, a designer, a part of a tester, because there were too many things for me to just be on one, product owner, part of a product owner, and these teams we were tasked with each team of, we could pitch features, and then as the whole team, we would decide which features to do for the next go round. And people were really struggling with that idea of slicing the feature down into stories, and saying, like, hey, impact mapping is a good way to do that. would you like to experiment with that? And like, sure. So I taught people how to do impact mapping, and they found it really did help them figure out what were the important things in the feature that they wanted to develop. And we all participated in the design meetings, all the planning meetings. I helped with exploratory testing, writing exploratory testing charter. I failed to mention that we did exploratory testing. Maybe I'm going to talk about this later. But anyway, we wrote exploratory testing charters that went in the backlog along with our feature stories, so that those were visible, and we would remember to do those at the epic or feature level as well as at the story level. So we wanted to really take care of potential problems across the system that any small change could cause. So I mentioned that we did a lot of pairing. So testers pairing with developers, designers pairing with developers, product owners and testers pairing, customer support pairing, all roles paired with other roles. And we also did a lot of group testing, like if we thought a feature was ready to go out to production or even to beta, like let's take 30 minutes, let's get some volunteers, let's get them in what would now be a virtual room, and either do ad hoc testing on the feature or actually take these exploratory testing charters and do more focused testing of different aspects of the feature, just to give us either the confidence of, yeah, it's ready to go, or looks like there are some issues that we better fix before we move ahead with this. So keep that feature flag turned off. And we did some mob programming as well, and with great success, including people in different roles, designer, developers, testers, product owner, all in the room together. And one of the best applications of mobbing that we did was mob acceptance testing, was what we called it. So when a small team developer pair or a couple of developer pairs had finished maybe 4 to 6 stories that were part of a new feature or new epic, we'd get everybody together, product owner, designer, the developers who worked on it, a tester, a customer support person. We'd get in a room and we would do a mob format. So we'd have a driver role and a navigator role, and switch that off. So the navigator's telling the driver what to type. And in this case, we were trying different tests on the application, generally on the UI, and then switching those roles as we went. And it really helped having all those different sets of eyes on it, but also it helped because we'd always have a lot of questions like, oh, is that icon in the right place? Is this the right verbiage on the screen? Is that the right error handling? Everybody needed to answer those questions was right there in the room. So as Woody Zuhl says, we had 0 question queue time. So in 30 minutes, we could get through 4 or 6 stories. And that also reduced the bottleneck of the developers waiting for the product owner to accept the story so they could merge the pull request and merge everything back into master. So that was a big help too, just to remove those bottlenecks and speed things up. Now that's just an example of experiments that we tried to make sure that we could succeed with continuous delivery. So what makes all this possible? We have to build relationships. So especially teams that are in a transition to Agile or to DevOps, they may not be used to working with people who are in other silos. And it's all about breaking down the silos. So, invite people to tell you about their work. It's like, oh, platform engineer, can you come and tell us about how our infrastructure for our pipeline is set up? Or offer to go explain something to them. Here's how I do exploratory testing. And asking for help is really important. If I ask somebody to help me and they help me, they're going to be my friend because they think they wouldn't have helped me if they weren't my friends. So that's a really great way to build relationships. Offer something good to eat, and don't just think about all the people outside of your team that could help you, and build a relationship with them too. The business people are important. The people who write the checks are important. People in sales and marketing can give you really good ideas about what customers are talking about and what they need. So there are lots of people who can help your team achieve quality goals. So we know from a lot of scientific studies that have been done that psychological safety is a prerequisite to high-performing teams. The book Accelerate, the State of DevOps survey also has a lot of data on this. Joshua Karievsky's modern Agile principles reflect that. Safety is a prerequisite. And I know some people think well, that's unicorn land, and I admit I've been living in unicorn land most of the last 20 years. But I see more and more organizations getting there and achieving that. And we know that we need leaders who have a vision. I highly recommend the book Accelerate because it talks a lot about this transformative leadership that teams really need to get to that high-performing state. Leaders who know how to support people and get out of their way when they need to, let them do their best work. And we know if we focus on speed, we're going to cut corners, we're going to do bad work, we're going to build up a lot of debt that drags us down. I have been able to live the dream of being on teams that focus on quality and understanding how later that does let us go faster. There are a lot of different reasons it looks like we're going faster, because sometimes it's just because we're such domain experts now that the business people can bring us a new feature they want, and we can say, I could do 80% of that and have the time. Can you live without this extra 20%? They always say, sure. And now we look like we're really fast. But there are a lot of things your team can do to invest in quality, and it will speed you up. Got to take the long view. I'm a fan of Jez Hummel and David Farley's principles of continuous delivery. And these are, kind of agile principles, DevOps principles, whatever. I think all the disciplines are finding benefit in working in small batches, automating the things that are repetitive, so they're free the people up to really solve the problems and do the interesting work, continuously improve. And again, we're all responsible for it. And we're responsible for it the whole way through. We don't just throw it over to the wall to the operations team, say, oh, deploy this and take care of it in production. So have conversations with your team. How can we got a lot of different testing activities to do. How can we fit them into the process to let us do continuous delivery or continuous deployment and deploy to production really frequently? And how can we engage everybody on the team and even some people from outside our immediate team to help us build quality in and do continuous testing? A lot of people say continuous testing and they only mean the automated tests that are in the continuous integration. When I say continuous testing, I mean it's like I don't know if you've seen Dan Ashby's testing all the way around the DevOps loop, but that's what I mean. We're testing feature ideas, we're testing what we learn from production, we're testing all the way around. So I definitely welcome questions or comments now, and this is my donkey Marcella, by the way. And feel free to reach out to me anytime, again, on Twitter and email. And I do have some resources for further learning.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. That was very insightful. Let's look at some questions. Well, one question from Jean here is, how did you get everyone, especially the non-developers, to pay attention during mobbing?
That is a really good question. It's really, I think it's one of the key things to do is have a really short time box. And I'm not a mob programming expert by any means, but I definitely wouldn't go over 6 minutes. I have seen people get as short as 2 minutes, and that gets people really engaged. The ultimate goal, I mean, you're not going to do it your first few sessions, but the ultimate goal is to really your minds kind of start to connect, and you can have better communication and think of more ideas. But I also believe if people are just really not feeling engaged in it, they should not be forced to engage in it. They can go do something on their own and come back later. It's not, we're not trying to punish anybody. But there are also a lot of guidelines to make people feel safe to contribute, and if they don't, maybe they feel like their lack of knowledge will be exposed or something. We had to make sure people feel safe around that. And there are a lot of things you can do. I like Marat Jarvis' mob programming book, for example. There's some good books out there. I'm sure Woody Zuhl's books give good guidelines as well.
But Sharath has a question. What suggestions do you have with regard to accessibility to improve engagement?
Regard to
accessibility to improve engagement.
Accessibility to the application?
Sharath?
Or, okay.
Yeah, let's see what he has to say. There we go.
My question is, we oftentimes don't have diverse teams, and to improve the quality of teams, we want to look at a more inclusive environment, but when we do that, the tools around us don't actually address the needs of those that have accessible challenges or situations. So I was just looking for best practices or guidance there.
Oh, that's a really, really good question, and I don't feel like I have a good answer for it off the top of my head. I think there are things you can do to at least give people a feeling of confidence that no matter what happens, they're not going to be made to feel less valuable on the team, things like that. I know there are a lot of accommodations that you can do. Sal Freudenberg has a really good book on things that you can do for neurodiverse people, for example, in a team situation. So I think that maybe just do some research on what particular thing you're trying to make more accessible. I think that this new all remote world is good because I think it's been a handicap. I've worked full-time or part-time remote for more than 10 years. And I think that the remote people tend to feel challenged because if most of the team is co-located, it takes a lot of discipline to include the remote people. And so I think things like this give us empathy when we all have to do it. But I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you. It is a really good question.
One of the things that I face quite often with companies that I tend to visit is this desire to have a development team and a testing team. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
When I hear the word test team or QA team, it's like alarm bells go off. I've seen situations where it made sense to have a separate testing team. So, for example, there's some embedded software that's for an oil field somewhere, and we don't have the tools to test it right here. We can do simulators or something, but there are some specialized cases where it makes sense for that to happen. But even so, they work very closely with the developers. I've always said that, especially in the context of testers and developers, that it's better when we work together. Things like automating tests. I'm a tester. I'm good at specifying tests. You're a programmer. You're really good at writing code. Let's get together. And I was quite heartened when I read the book Accelerate by Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jed Humble and Gene Kim that sums up conclusions on the automated tests. Those teams have reliable automated tests. The developers run them locally. The developers look into failures in the continuous integration, and that's a predictor of a high-performing team. And they even say in the book, this does not mean you can get rid of your testers, because in these situations, the testers were helping with automation as well as helping with what I like to call human-centric testing. We say manual testing. It sounds like manual labor. Why is that less valuable? But the testing where we have to use our brains and our eyes and other senses, like exploratory testing, accessibility testing, it can all be automated. Some security testing can be automated. So they've got data that show that now. Yay! I've seen that, for my whole career, and now there's data to back it up. But it's a cultural problem, and it's on both sides, because testers or QA people, they think their job is to find bugs, but what we really need to do is prevent the bugs. So it's a big mindset shift.
That's so true. Talking about culture, the minute we see each other as adversaries, it doesn't really work that way at all. I remember, way back in time when I was a young programmer, my testers would find things that I would never even have thought about. And what that really did for me is to develop the deepest respect for them, to say, wow, you know what, I'm stuck here with the code. Here's my line of thinking. And you're coming from this other direction and you're able to see things I didn't even, think about. And that just absolutely, changed my view of how testers are important. And that's kind of the thing to really keep in mind, is to say that, we are part of a single team. Members of a family, we work together for the same cause, and we're not working against each other. So the culture is extremely important. I absolutely, I think that that's important to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, not just testers, but also designers and custom. We found huge benefits from getting the customer support people as full members of the team and participating in design and things like that as well.
Yeah. What would you say is one of your utmost challenges in terms of making progress in the world we live in development, of course?
The biggest challenge?
Yep.
Golly, there's so many. One of the challenges is just there's just so much to learn. And when we're feeling pressure to deliver features, how do we have time to stop and learn and try experiments? I think it's really important to do small experiments to see what we can improve. And some of those experiments are going to fail, so we have to keep them small. I learned that from Linda Rising. But teams a lot of the times are under so much pressure to deliver features that they don't feel like they have time to do that, and it becomes a kind of a situation of I'm too busy drowning to learn how to swim. We have these new tools, all this new stuff all the time, things like observability that a lot of people haven't heard of yet, that could be really valuable for your team, but if you don't have time to stop and learn it, you can't take advantage of it.
Yeah, one of the, I don't know whose code this is, but one of the codes that fundamentally changed my thinking was don't confuse your inability with impossibility. And,
I like that.
And that really shook me up because, if I say I don't know, I love saying I don't know. Because if I don't know, I can come to you and you can teach me how to do it. We both can go to somebody else and we can learn. Impossibility is so, dark. It is to say, we're done, we can't improve anymore. I always tell, the teams I work with to say, it's okay to say, I don't know. That simply says that there is an answer out there we can go find out. To your point, doing things in small increments. It's something that I'm beginning to learn, and relearn every step of the way. Sometimes we go too far into a problem, and then we try to solve what should have been done in the first step. And to take that in increments, I think makes a huge difference. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Well, that's great. I don't see any more questions come through. I really want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's getting late in the evening for you as well over there. So thank you so much for spending the evening with us. And I couldn't have had for a better ending of this digital event. I cannot wait to see you here in Colorado, hopefully in August when the situation improves. So thank you so much for your time and all your teachings for us.